Greetings, fellow Americans. Welcome to Fireside Chats, State of Our Nation. I am your host, Susanna Tanner, candidate for President 2028. We are going to talk about some disaster relief efforts today. So I have talked about disaster relief efforts before. I personally donate to some different disaster relief efforts, and you can find a list of those on my website if you're interested in seeing what I donate to or who I donate to. So donations are a big start when it comes to disaster relief. One of the ways that we already donate is financially. We give our money. Another way that we donate is through food and goods that people can use immediately. Clothing and blankets, pillows, all that kinds of stuff. Something that we don't really see too much of is big companies like lumber companies, Home Depot, Lowe's, those sorts of companies. We don't see them really too often donating their goods to help with rebuilding disaster areas and such. So the National Recovery Act includes a disaster relief efforts, which includes getting companies like Home Depot and Lowe's and other big lumber distributors, hardware stores, all of that, Ace Hardware, even auto shops like O'Reilly's and Napa to donate a certain amount of product to the efforts to rebuild areas that have been affected by disasters. And we can use all kinds of different things for those areas. A lot of the items that we could use for rebuilding, we could also pay for after the initial donation. Because then there would be donations coming in for those specific efforts to purchase the extra materials that are needed to help rebuild. I realize that there are already, contracting companies that do help with those relief efforts, but it doesn't seem to be quite enough, if that makes sense. It doesn't happen, the relief doesn't happen fast enough to really provide enough relief to de-stress the situation. I'm not so sure that anybody really realizes that. And that's part of why it takes such a long time for areas that have been hit by disaster to recover. It is such a long waiting process, not just for materials, but for funding to come in to be able to purchase materials. I think being aware of this might help a lot of people understand what more is needed in our nation to help our economy be stable, to help our economy stabilize, first of all, and to help us provide better regulations, better strategies for recovering from these disasters. We could use examples like the fire disaster in Hawaii on the island of Maui. We could use examples like the tornadoes that are currently, within the last few days at least, been spawning in the southeast of the United States, Tornado Alley. There are many different strategies that we can use to get the ball rolling on a speedier recovery from these kinds of disasters. Aside from investigations taking the longest, because of course investigations, you have to talk to people, you have to gather evidence, make sure that we know who's at fault for what, if anyone is. Making sure that we have everything in place, the strategies ready to implement and to make sure that our people are in the know. We're going to be implementing this at this time. Please be ready. I think that that is going to really improve our disaster recovery. It's going to improve our economy because we will have things moving a little bit faster. Of course, there's only so fast that our pace can take us. So making sure that we can keep a reasonable, steady flow is also important. There are some other things too that are going to be implemented with the disaster relief, and these things do not just involve the people who are immediately affected by the disasters, the citizens who maybe have lost their homes or something similar. It also affects the people who respond to these disasters. Firefighters, police, ambulance, EMTs, all these first responders, they experience a lot of trauma. So providing types of counseling, providing different support systems, such as peer services, peer support services, within the communities that they are helping, and also within their individual communities, like the firefighters communities or the other first responders. Making sure that they have access to those resources will also help improve their responses to the disasters. Oftentimes, we think that we can take a lot, and maybe some of us can, but when we reach our limit, we need to really be able to access those resources, to be able to figure out how to deal with the stuff that goes on up in our heads. Trauma is something that I think we all experience at some level, so it really does affect us. Learning how to, providing the resources really to be able to work around those traumas, to deal with those traumas, I think is really important for everyone. When we experience natural disasters, we do experience trauma on every end of the spectrum, from the people who actually are involved directly to the people who watch on the news and through social media and other outlets where they hear about these things happening. It affects us all. So the peer support is going to be really important. We don't have enough counselors in the field, certified counselors, to be able to provide such a support. So implementing peer support services is going to be important. Also implementing the employment program for American citizens through the national education system is going to also greatly benefit our disaster areas. It will provide the opportunity for people to go help in these disaster areas while getting paid for it and learning new skills to be able to take with them to other employment opportunities. And who knows, some people may make this particular type of position a permanent position, where that's what they go do, is they respond to disasters. They help people recover in some way or another. These are different types of employment positions that are really going to help benefit our economy, benefit our people, and be able to keep our nation more stable and increase our ability to recover from these disasters. There's a lot we can do with it. There's definitely a lot we can do with it. Another aspect of disaster recovery is making sure that we have all of our officials in on making sure that all of our finances are flowing correctly, making sure that distribution is going where it needs to go. You know, box trucks with relief goods and such. Also, making sure that nothing can prevent those disaster relief efforts from getting to their destinations. We saw this with Donald Trump in recent weeks. He halted food trucks that were on their way to food banks down south. And that's millions of dollars worth of food and meals for a week for at least 1,000 people. People who could be experiencing homelessness and struggling. And unfortunately, it took quite a toll. There's been litigation, and it still hasn't quite been resolved. We don't want this to be happening. So making sure that our legislators, our elected representatives, understand that they need to be on board with these efforts is also going to be important. We, the people, are the ones who have to guide them to that point. We have to make sure they understand that's what we want. It's unfortunate that it can be very difficult to get in touch with your legislators, to communicate with them. However, it is possible, so I do encourage it. So, with disaster relief also comes a lot of responsibility as far as making sure that those who have been affected have a temporary place where they can be safe and not be considered homeless. Well, they would be considered, but it would be a temporary status until their house could be rebuilt or they relocated. And that's always an option. People can relocate, but if someone doesn't want to relocate, no one should try to force them. There's different ways that can happen. We've seen that in the past. We saw it with Maui. Much of the property that was damaged there was given an offer to many of the residents. Some people took those offers and came to the mainland of the United States. I don't think that just seems wrong to me. That's bribing people to get out of a paradise or an area that they have lived for generations. And Hawaii really is a paradise. It can definitely be turned into a paradise, even better than it was before. I have suggestions on that as well. However, with the cleanup efforts that have been ongoing since the disaster happened, it's a little more difficult to really be able to implement something like that. If there had been an option before this, it would have been a lot easier because we could have just planned for it after this disaster happened. Even if that, sounds suspicious, making sure that you have a plan for something to recover, to make sure that the people are taken care of and make sure that they have what they need, that's where your biggest strategies are going to really improve our system, our nation, our economy in general. So I have donated to places like the Firefighters Association in California, especially after the Palisades and Eaton fires. That disaster down there was just as awful as the Maui disaster. So I've also donated to relief efforts in Lahaina for the people of Lahaina. And I've also donated to places down in the southern states where they actually take goods to people. They help people financially. They directly help people financially to recover. So I encourage more people to find these different places to donate to. It helps them provide for the community. It helps us as individuals continue to help provide for the community. There's some other disaster relief efforts that can take place. I think making sure that all of our people know where to find resources is definitely going to improve disaster recovery. The resources are important not just because those resources can help with recovery, but because you might be able to get resources that you did not know existed before. Oftentimes, one resource will have another resource available if they cannot fulfill the needs of the person in need. I've seen this here even in Washington, where one resource that I was using or that someone else was using, they didn't quite have everything that person needed to accomplish their goals. So they provided them another resource that would further benefit them in accomplishing their goals. And that's something that we should strive for, especially when it comes to disaster recovery. Making sure that we have the resources available for everyone and that they know how to access those resources. Making sure that misinformation is kept to a minimum is also going to be very important. I noticed that when the two hurricanes hit down in Florida, Milton and Hurricane Helene. There were some people that did not apply for the relief efforts, the relief funding, because they had been told that falsely that FEMA would repossess their houses or something close to that nature, something similar. This has never happened. I've never heard ever of FEMA trying to take someone's property because they couldn't pay back a disaster relief, and that's not how disaster relief works in the first place. Making sure that people understand that very clearly, even before a disaster hits, is imperative to the successful recovery of any area hit by a disaster. Making sure those resources are available, making sure that they are easily accessible. I do believe that in some areas, more people did heed warnings of evacuations. They heeded the evacuation warnings, and with the second hurricane that hit down in Florida, it did save lives. So making sure that people actually heed those warnings, that is proof that we can save lives. There's also some things that I noticed happened during different disasters, especially during the hurricanes, that really helped prevent disasters. We saw these aqua walls that were placed around major hospitals, and they prevented the wall of water from infiltrating the hospital, especially the lower levels. It's a very fantastic piece of technology, and it would be amazing to see more of those types of safety measures implemented around cities that experience water disasters like hurricanes and floods and such. There's even an idea to create smaller, more affordable versions for people who have their own homes. It's definitely things that we can work on. Well, that is all I have for you today. Disaster relief. Thank you for your time, and may our path lead to peace and prosperity.